Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. And this is my live discussion on The Wheel of Time, Season 1. And here to discuss it with me is the Mark One. Beware of the Mark One. This is my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. Great to finally join for this discussion. That's the thing. Every time I think of this show, I think of like they do that to channel the one power, whereas like Doctor Strange does like a more circular motion. Am I correct? Do they do something like that?
Yeah, they do more of a
yeah.
That's very true. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. And what does Gandalf do when he just uses his staff, right?
Yeah, he just uses his staff. Like, yeah, he like points the staff and like puts it down and stuff.
Oh yeah, I didn't really give that much thought to all the different motions that people do to conjure magic. Yeah, very true. And Brandon says, your brother, not your warder. No, he's the Mark One. He's the one I'm fighting against. He's not my warder. All right. So I've been looking forward to talking with you about this, Mark. You are coming into this series completely fresh, having no idea about the source material. So just as a reminder for anyone watching this who hasn't watched my previous videos, I read the first two books like 20 years ago or something like that. They actually influenced the book that I wrote quite a bit. But it had been a while, so I didn't really remember everything. So I was rereading the first book, and I am now almost done rereading the first book. Like I got like 100 pages left, so I'm almost there. I'm almost to that ending, which I understand is quite a bit different from the ending of the show. But so it was an interesting journey for me because at various points the show was ahead of me where in my reread. So I was coming in like a completely fresh person who like a show watcher only. But then in various points I was a book reader, and now I can look back on all the previous episodes as a book reader except for the final episode. So it's kind of an interesting journey for me, or at least the first book. So I don't have the context of the whole series, which I do understand they definitely introduced elements of at least book 2, if not book 3, into the first season. So that stuff I'm unfamiliar with. But Mark, as someone who was not familiar with the source material at all, I'm just curious your overall thoughts. What were your thoughts on this season of television?
Yeah, so I'm still not motivated to go out and read the books, but I did enjoy the first season. I had heard of this book series when I saw the previews, and I knew it was based off of well-established book series. That did pique my interest, and I did want to check it out and watch it. And I did enjoy it quite a bit because there's a couple. If I compare it to other fantasy shows I watch, one is The Witcher, which I guess is more based off of a video game, but there were also books on it. I didn't like that at all. I gave up on it. And then there was his Dark Materials, which I liked, and I watched through the second season, but I think I like this one better than his Dark Materials. And that was another one where I didn't know anything about the books too. So I did really like this show. It is going to make an appearance in my top 10 shows of the year. So, and even make it up to the top 5. I will even say that. So I did really like it, but I didn't quite think it was like, the best thing ever, but I did enjoy it. For me, it was the things that I liked the most were like the characters, and the character development and some of it felt it's similar to Game of Thrones in that I felt like and even The Expanse as well, where it felt like a well-developed fleshed out world that we're jumping into, where some other shows the world seems kind of ill defined. I think his Dark Materials, for example, didn't do a good job of world building, the show at least. And so, but whereas this, I really like the world building. I think the characters I was really invested in. The thing that turned me off about the show the most was, well, ironically, what I'm using my name for, the villains, the Dark One, the Trollocs, the fact that it seemed really like a stereotypical fantasy Lord of the Rings-esque, where there's a big evil one and there's goods trying to defeat the evil one, and there's the prophecy of a chosen one. So that stuff kind of turned me off, but not enough. Not that I totally hated it or ruined the show, but whenever the Trollocs appeared, I'm like, oh, these things I thought they looked silly. But when we got more into the character development and the character interactions, that's when I was more turned on. So overall, yes, I did really enjoy the show.
Well, if you have it in your top 5, you have it ranked higher than I do.
Oh, wow.
But it's more just like, I don't know, relative to other shows. I just had other shows ranked a little higher than it, but it is in my top 10 as well. But not.
Well, I will say I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, which is what I gave it.
Yeah.
So, so we gave it the same rating. Yeah, so this show overall had a very mixed reaction. There are those who did enjoy it, like we did. There's those who really loved it, and there are those who really hated it. And I feel like the hate is probably mostly coming from fans of the books who did not like the way that it was adapted for the screen, which you're always going to get those type of people. But I feel like that's where the majority of the hate. It's not like I've talked to a whole lot of people who haven't read the books, but from the small sample size that I have had, it seems like the people who haven't read the books at all seem to enjoy it. I haven't heard a lot of hate poured onto it from non-book readers, but from some of the people who have read the books are really pissed off. But there's also people who read the books who love it as well. So you've got it. A mixed bag of that. And I was looking it up on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb today, and it's about 7.3, I think, on IMDb out of 10, and the overall rating and a 71% audience score. So I think that really reflects sort of the mixed bag. There's probably people ranking it very highly and people ranking it very poorly. And then you and I, with our 8 out of 10, would be a little higher on the high end of that. We're more of the 80 percentile. I think then in a lot of ways it really adapted the first book really well, and I think it changed a ton of things. It changed a lot of things, but I think a lot of those things were necessary to change for the small screen, and I'll kind of talk about that as we go through. Some of the changes I did not like at all,
okay.
But not to the point where I'm like one of those book readers, like, oh, it sucks. But I'm also not. I've only read the first book, and I read the first 2 books, but I don't really remember the second book. So I'm not one of those people who read like all 14 books twice or anything like that. I think those people are probably a lot more invested in the source material than I am. I think that it had some pacing issues. It felt like I don't know if it's a budget thing, but I could have used another 2 episodes. It felt a little rushed for me. There are things that I think they need to work out some kinks for season 2, but I like the show enough to want to go on to season 2, and I'm confident that they will be able to work out some of those issues and have even a better second season than the first season. But overall, 8 out of 10 for me, 80 percentile. Really, really enjoyed the show quite a lot. And I don't know. Do you have anything else to add, or shall we just?
I just wanted to say that the reactions I've heard were like almost entirely positive. In fact, maybe it's because I hear it from our mother, because she loves it and just says the best things about it ever. And most of the other reactions I heard online has been like extremely positive. I'm actually surprised that there's a group of people who totally hate the show, but it does make sense that if, as you say, drastically change the books, that there would be these book purists that would not be okay with that and be really upset with it. And that's not to discount their opinion. I mean, it's still valid. But I do, like, as a non-book reader, I could see how they rushed through the story. Like, I can see, like, it didn't necessarily feel rushed to me, but I could tell that it seems like there was, like, a lot more story to be told that they kind of just skipped over. I just got that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I do think they got the essence of each of the character stories. And we're going to divide up the characters and talk about it in just a minute. But for example, the Matt and Rand story was very, very distilled, but I think they got the essence of it from the books. They didn't. There was way more stuff that happened, but I still think they got the essence of it. But I still felt like it was the pacing was a little off to me overall. Especially that first episode was the worst as far as pacing for me personally. But that was the one I was definitely familiar with. I had just read like the first episode worth of material in the new book, and I was like, well, they just rushed through that. But I think maybe one or two more episodes would have done it good, and I don't know, maybe it's a budget thing or something like that. But yeah,
and I will say it's kind of strange because at times I felt like the story dragged too much.
Yeah. Well, I actually mentioned that in one of my other reviews too. That it's not just that it was rushed; it was kind of slow in places and then fast. Like it was kind of, it was a weird, it was a kind of a wonky pacing. It was kind of like slow, fast, slow. And like it was a little wonky. But I think that is something that definitely could be worked out.
And the last thing I wanted to say about this show is that I did, I think like a couple months ago, 5 or 6 months ago, I did a video of my top 10 favorite opening sequences of TV shows. And if I did it after the show came out, I would include this. I love the opening sequence to this show. That's one of my favorite things, like the song and the visuals. I think it's up there with some of my favorite opening sequences.
I'm glad you feel that way because I feel the same way too.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy. I feel like fantasy shows need to have like a really epic like an opening like that. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. Have we said hello to Brandon in the chat yet? I don't know if we have.
I believe so. Yeah.
Brandon, hello. You said you're midway through chapter 23 of The Eye of the World, which is the first book. And didn't you say that you read him a long time ago as well? And he says that the Trollocs look silly as well. The Fade is just a blind Nazgul to me. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Yeah. I think the Fade. I like the Fade. The Fades creep me out in the book.
Yes.
Actually, it was one of the things that I complained about in the first episode. There was like a super creepy scene with the Fade when they first introduced it that they cut out of the show. And I was like, well, I understand why they cut it out, but still. It was one of the things that like really stuck with me in the book.
Yeah, I kind of liked the Fade, but I just didn't like the look at the Trollocs at all.
Yeah, I can definitely see that point of view. The Trollocs, when I read the book, I just kind of, read them as orcs. There's another one of these creatures that go around going, rawr, rawr. Yeah. So it's just kind of, so I didn't really have like expectations for what they would look like in the show. I definitely don't think they put a lot of their budget into the Trollocs, but whatever. Okay, let's dive into it. I wanted to go through all the character stories and then maybe touch on that ending if we don't get to it when we're talking through the character stories. And I'll probably divide it out by the groups of characters that separate earlier on in the season when they all go their separate ways, but also talk about the characters individually as well. And I'm going to start with my personal least favorite and then work my way up to my personal favorite. And we'll go that way. My personal least favorite storyline and then my personal least favorite character on the show is the Perrin and Iguain storyline when they go off to they're called the Tinkers, but I call them gypsies. I heard someone else on another podcast refer to them as like deadheads or fish fans. I'm like, no, they're not like that. They're not like they're gypsies for sure. So that storyline, and then the Perrin storyline in general, and Perrin as a character in general was my least favorite. And so I kind of want to get your thoughts because Brandon Sanderson, who is the author who finished up the last 3 books because Robert Jordan died. So Brandon Sanderson got approval from the Jordan family and all that stuff. And he finished up, I think, the last 3 or 4 books. So he's essentially the living author of The Wheel of Time. And he is like a executive producer, kind of in the same way George R. R. Martin was an executive producer. Like, he doesn't have any real power or anything, but he can, read over the script and he can give his opinion before it airs and all of that stuff. And his biggest beef with the adaptation of the show is that they added something to Perrin's character that does not exist in the books. So the fact that he kills his wife with an axe when he's trying to kill the Trollocs in the first episode. And he doesn't have a wife in the books. They're a little younger in the books. I think they're like 16. And I actually liked that they aged them up. I think it made a lot of sense. I think if you had a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds running around, then it kind of starts looking like a CW show. And they aged them up in maturity, too. Unlike Game of Thrones, where the first season, it's like they were still acting like little kids. Like Jon Snow was still acting like a 12-year-old, even though he has a beard. But I feel like they aged up their personalities. And that, I liked all that. I liked that they did that. But they added a wife for Perrin that didn't exist in the books. And then they added this thing where he kills her. He accidentally murders her when he's fighting with the Trollocs. And Brandon Sanderson's complaint was that you are adding this weight onto this character that he did not carry in the books. So he's going to have to do all these things that he did in the books, but he's going to have this huge weight on him that didn't exist in the books. And I wasn't bothered by some as much as he was, or I've also heard other book fans complain about that as well. I don't think it bothered me, but I also think he makes a good point, because what I predict is going to happen is he will mention that he killed his wife once, maybe twice, early second season, and it'll be dropped and it'll never be mentioned again as if it never happened, because it didn't happen in the books. I think it's going to be too difficult to try to carry that weight of something like that inside of this character for however many seasons they end up having when that's something that is not original to the character. It seems like an unnecessary weight for him to carry, and I think it's just going to vanish. That's what I predict is going to happen, because it doesn't exist in the books. I already felt like it was kind of fading out by the end of the first season, to be honest. So I kind of agree that, it didn't hugely bother me, but I didn't love that choice. So you're someone who had no idea what happened in the books. What was your kind of reaction to this character, accidentally killing his wife, and then how he behaved, how that affects him throughout the season?
Well, first of all, I'll say I'm shocked to hear that it wasn't in the books, because to me, that was his defining trait. That was his biggest defining trait for the season, was the fact that he accidentally killed his wife. So, I could see why book readers would be upset with that then, because that's how they define the character in the show. And so it would be a totally different character. But because you mentioned that he was your least favorite, and I will say that he wasn't my least favorite. I don't know if I would say I'd have a least favorite character. So I don't know, but it wasn't him. But the Gypsy storyline was by far my least favorite. That bored the hell out of me. I really didn't like it, and I didn't see the point of it. It felt like filler. It felt like a waste of time. And but as far as aging the characters up, I was thinking of you mentioned Game of Thrones. I was thinking how it bothered me actively how they kept calling Robb Stark the young wolf, and everyone would refer to him as a young boy. I'm like, he's in his 20s. That bothered me. But so I didn't have that reaction here. I would have never known that they aged the characters up. So I think they obviously did a better job at it. And I think you're right. It would have looked a bit more silly if they were like 16-year-olds. I feel like it feels better that they're in their 20s. Now, as far as I don't think it was my least favorite character, but I don't know if I did like that storyline of him having killed his wife, because he seemed very mopey for most of the season, and it was kind of, I don't know, I wasn't really invested in it. I think there were a few times, like when that dark noise or whatever it was, the evil dark noise was talking to him, and they were telling, making him feel guilty about that. So you did it on purpose or whatever. Like I did like that. Like, so there's a few times where it became relevant to the story, but most of the time, I don't know. I think you're exactly right. It added an unnecessary extra weight to it, and it just made him really mopey. And I just wasn't interested in that.
Yeah, I read that character in the book as already just being sort of on the not mopey necessarily, but sort of on the pessimistic side, and like, oh, they're all dead, all my friends are dead. Like there's just, which, by the way, one of the podcasts I listened to said that he reminds me of first season Jon Snow, and it was doing like an impersonation of him that sounded like Jon Snow. I can't really do it, but he was just like, "I'll kill my wife." He's like Jon Snow.
So was that Josh Wigler?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah. But yeah, I did think he was too like whiny and mopey, and I don't like that they added that to his character. I think he can already be a little mopey and a little pessimistic without that, and I think you've given this character a weight that I predict is going to disappear. Like they're just not going to know what to do with it long term, and it's going to be as if it didn't happen. Is what I predict, because they shouldn't have done it in the first place.
I will say I hope they don't do that. I hope that they find a way to make it relevant, but they don't need to dwell on it as much.
Yeah. And now as far as the gypsy storyline, they're called the Tinkers, but yeah, the gypsies.
Yeah.
So this is one of those examples of something that I watched the show before I had reread up to that point in the book, and just as a pure show watcher, I really did not like this storyline at all. I thought it was a waste of my time. I was like, why are we spending time on this? This is pointless. And there's a scene when that one lady says, like, kind of acts like she knows that he killed his wife, like, oh, your axe, but then they just drop it and never follow up on it. I'm like, what is the point of any of this? Like, Perrin is trying to find peace with these peaceful people. I don't get the point for character development. I don't get the point for story. It just seems like a waste of time. Then I caught up in the book and I read the Perrin and Iguain scenes in the book, and then I hated it even more because the Perrin and Iguain scenes in the books are way more interesting, because they in the books, most of their time is spent with a different character who they cut out of the show, and they're only with the Tankers for one, maybe two chapters. They're barely in the book, and they spend the majority of their storyline with this other character who is someone who can communicate with wolves, and he's kind of teaching. There's Perrin. The show touches on that a little bit, but doesn't really explain it or get into it. In the book, they explain it a little more what it is, and there's this other guy, mentor figure, who has that ability too, and is going to tell him, Perrin, oh yeah, you have this ability too. And that was way more interesting, and they cut that guy out of the show. I'm sort of hoping that maybe that's a character that they'll kind of bring back into season 2, so that he can be a mentor for Perrin in season 2. Maybe they'll work it into the season 2 storyline somehow, and that's how the show viewers can learn more about Perrin's ability to connect with wolves. Would be to maybe bring in that character. I think his name was Elias or something. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but maybe they'll bring that character into season 2. But otherwise, I'm just like, why did they cut that guy out and have these boring fucking gypsies? They're not even that big of a deal in the book either. So I think that would probably be, out of everything on the show, I think that storyline is my absolute least favorite.
Yeah, and I agree.
Um, but so yeah, and Brandon says Elias. Yeah, yeah. I wasn't sure how to pronounce. I knew how to spell it. I wasn't sure how to. If Elias is how you pronounce it. But yeah, I hope they bring that character into season 2. Did you have any thoughts on what did you think of how the wolves seem to protect Perrin and that? Did that do anything for you?
It was all right. It was weird for me at first, especially the when God, I can't remember what they call the White Cloaks that one evil
Yeah, the
dude
White Cloaks.
captured
Yeah,
and was torturing him, and he like kind of turned into a wolf or whatever, and the wolves came. Like that was like I was like, what is happening? But for the most part, so I think maybe they could have built it up more, but I feel like it's intended to have an air of mystery on it. So,
yeah,
so it's more of like waiting to see where they go with this
yeah.
kind of thing. So far, I'm intrigued, and
Okay.
I'll see where they take it.
So hopefully their plan is to bring that character into the second season to kind of help flesh some of that stuff out because he's in the first book and you know a lot more about the wolves in the first book
All right.
because of that other character who kind of explains everything. But maybe the show's intention is to kind of leave it more of a mystery and then flesh it out with maybe bring that character in season 2 and flesh it out a little bit more. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do with it. But I would, if they are saving that character for season 2, then and once season 2 airs, then I will feel better about them leaving him out of season 1 and putting in the Tinkers. Like, what was the point of them? They're just so pointless. Anyways, so yeah. Perrin's a werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Teen Wolf. No.
Well, I will say the impression I got from that, and I'm probably wrong because I haven't read the books, but this is going off the show. The impression I got is that each of the 5, special people, it made me think they each had their own special power, their own special ability, and that Perrin's was to communicate with wolves and everyone has a different thing.
Yeah, and that I cannot confirm or deny because
that's fine.
Well, no, because I don't know. I just don't know.
Right.
That's a future book thing. So, but I also get the same impression that is the case both in the show and in the book. But I am not at the point in the book where they would have revealed that yet either. I think that's more of a future book thing. But I agree. I definitely get that impression.
I got a quick question. I should have asked this before I looked this up, but when did this first book came out?
I think in the 90s.
Oh, the 90s. Okay, for some reason I was thinking it was like 60s or 70s.
No. It could have possibly been 80s.
Okay.
I read it in like 1998, 99, 2000, somewhere in that era. And I don't think it was brand new then.
Right. So it's not like that old. It's relatively recent.
Yeah. So Brandon says 1993 about.
Yeah.
I think that sounds about right to me. Yeah. Were you going to say something else?
Oh no, I was just going to say what you just said. So that's
okay. Okay, Hillbilly, buckle up. All right, thank you for joining us in the chat. Okay, so let's. Also, part of that storyline is Iguain. I thought it was kind of pointless for her as well, but I did really like her. What they did with her in the first episode, kind of showing the ritual for her. They didn't go into a lot of detail in the show, but on their village, like when girls reach a certain age, they get a braid and they become women and they go through a little ritual, but they don't really talk about the ritual in the book. So I thought that was very nice. And I overall like that they are exploring that she does have the ability to touch the one power. And I don't feel like the show really goes into depth with her, but with her character, but I overall, like her depiction. And by the way, I like that they have gotten people of color to play some of these characters. In the books, I don't think they specify like anyone's skin color, but if you're reading it as a white person, you're just probably picturing all these white guys with British accents, because that's normally what fantasy is. But I appreciate this show like really went out of their way to cast people of color, not just in the main cast members, but a lot of the background characters and side characters and all that. And Brandon is correcting himself, saying Why the World was released in 1990. Okay, so almost 80s, so early 90s. And I did want. Well, I'll get your thoughts first. I did actually want to talk about the White Cloaks too, because I really like what they did with that in the show. But did you have any particular thoughts on that character?
I can never remember how to pronounce her name.
Iguain.
Yeah, okay.
Iguain.
Yeah, I just always refer to. So they were. You say they didn't specify their race in the books, but there were the same genders. I didn't gender swap.
Yeah, and I didn't gender swap anyone.
Okay, and so there was a romance between her and Rand in the book as well.
Oh yeah. It's a little more advanced here because it's more like teenage love in the books because they're teenagers.
Right, yeah.
So like when they had sex in the first episode, people were like, "Whoa, oh my god, that's because they definitely hadn't gone that far in the books. They hadn't reached that point yet, but it makes sense if they're older that would be the case. So I like that too. I like that their romance is a little further along. It's a little more developed than it was in the book.
Right. Yeah, no, for the most part, I really like this character. I thought she's one of the characters I found really interesting and that they fleshed her out a bit. I will say, I guess I'll just say this here, is that I wasn't a huge fan of the characters splitting off at all. That kind of annoyed me, and I was just waiting for them to get back together. I guess I didn't really think there was much to do with her when she was paired with Perrin. I guess she was less interesting to me then. Yeah. And especially when they put them with the gypsies, made it even worse. So I was just kind of waiting for her to get back to Rand because I thought that was more interesting with her. And of course, waiting for her to find it. It took her forever to find out that her little mentor was still alive. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name, but
Nynaeve.
Nynaeve? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll get to her later.
Yeah. So in the middle part of the season, her storyline kind of bored me. But I overall liked this character a lot. I think she was well portrayed and well fleshed out and stuff. So yeah. I did enjoy that.
Yeah. Again, I agree that that storyline was incredibly pointless and boring. So I definitely agree with that. That's when her storyline really dragged when they put her in that. But the separation thing is directly from the book, so I don't know if that's something they could have changed, adapted for the show. I'm not sure what they could have done differently there, but the fact that they separated in those particular groups of people, that was exactly from the books. Some of the things that happened is a little different, but
I mean, I would assume that because it seems like it's a little bit of a fantasy trope too to have like a group of people and you separate them out and they go on their own adventures and they meet back up.
Yeah. But I did want to talk about the White Cloaks because there is something similar that happens in the book where Perrin and Iguain get captured by the White Cloak, and they're actually rescued by Lan and Moraine in the book and not by the wolves. But the wolves do play a role earlier on in their chapters. But that particular character, I forget the character's name, the questioner of the White Cloaks, he doesn't exist in the book, unless it's a character that comes in a future book that I haven't read yet. He's not in the first book, for sure. They have different White Cloaks, and it definitely plays out a lot differently. They're not like trying to get them to use the one power or anything like that in the book. And actually, I like what they did in the show more. I thought that this guy was sufficiently evil. I don't think he's dead though. They acted like he was dead. I thought she just stabbed him in the shoulder. Like I thought he was going to be fine and come back again, but I don't know. I don't know. What were your thoughts on the White Cloaks?
They're okay. I guess I wasn't as impressed with,
Yeah.
with them and that dude, but I didn't have any issues with him
Yeah.
either. I think he was significantly evil, and I do think, that he seemed like he thought he was doing the right thing. Like he thought he was on the side of good. So, and I thought they did a good job portraying that. But I will say I did like that the sort of parent and Iguain. That's right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that they got themselves out of the situation, or rather, the wolves got them out, rather than them being rescued by Moraine. I think, I like that she wasn't the one to rescue them, because I think that makes it would have made her like too powerful, or like she can appear right at the right place where where she needs to be. So I like it better that they kind of were able to resolve the situation themselves. So I actually did like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I do too. That they all kind of come back together on their own. Because in the book, she has she gives them these coins. They are essentially tracking devices, so she knows
Oh,
where
right.
they are. And I kind of like that they left that out of the show, and then the characters had to kind of find their own way back.
Yeah, it had a very element where they didn't know where they were, and it made it feel like more stakes. Like they didn't know if they would actually meet back up together. Like it was more up in the air because they
Yeah.
had no idea where everyone was. I think a tracking device would have deflated that.
Yeah. Well, the other characters didn't. The Perrin and Matt, or Perrin and Iguain, and then Matt and Rand in the books both are saying, "Oh, everyone else is dead. We're the only ones left."
Yeah,
So they didn't know. But
yeah.
yeah, in the show, like nobody knows where anyone is, which I did like. Um, okay, let's move on. Unless you had anything else to add about any of that. Um, so let's get into the next storyline, which Rand and Matt separate. They end up together, and then we'll start with Matt because I liked what they did with the storyline. I think it gets a little wonky at the end, and so apparently that actor left the show and they've recast him for season 2, and it seems like that happened after episode 6 because what I heard is they filmed it sequentially. So that like him not going with them was probably like, well, this actor's not on the show anymore, so he's gone now because
Oh, right.
he definitely goes with them in the books.
Mm.
And I actually thought they did a really good job of kind of making up for it and like explaining, oh well, he didn't stay behind, because the biggest like plot hole for me is like, well, what if he's the dragon? No, he's not there, and they don't know who the dragon is. But then Moraine is like, well, he's kind of taken by evil, so I wouldn't want him anywhere near the Dark One, even if he was a dragon, then that's fine. They addressed it in the show. But I think that his ending gets a little weird because of that. And I was trying to Google what the hell happened to this actor, and nobody is saying. Like the showrunner's mum on it. I don't even know if it was his choice, if it was the show's choice. Like they're being quiet about it. So I don't know what happened with the actor, but he's been recast for season 2. So obviously they'll meet up with that character again in season 2 because he's been recast. But I did feel the ending was a little wonky for that character because of that, but they can't really help that. But up to that point, I actually really liked what they did with this character. Now having read that portion of the book, I actually like how they portrayed it on the show even a little better. I think they really emphasize even a little more how that knife has affected him. Whereas in the show or the book, I just feel like he was just kind of laying around being mopey and like saying mean things and not really doing much. Whereas the show, they really kind of played up the question of, can he channel? Is he in league with the Dark One? Is he going to go to the dark side? Is he going to be a male channeler that's going to end up like Logain? And those who I really felt like the show did a great job of kind of really portraying that and putting that up there. But I don't know. What were your thoughts on that character story?
Well, see, I would have had no idea about it. I didn't know anything about the actor being recast or anything like that. It was only from watching your reviews that I learned about that. And I feel like had I not known that, I would have never known that there was anything different or wrong. It seemed to track and make sense to me. In fact, the him not going seemed to like really make sense for the story for me, because he seemed like he was never interested in going in the first place, and it seems like he's like, especially the way he questions is like, oh, do I really have to go? And that seemed to make sense for the character. And also, you mentioned Moraine's reaction where she was like, well, if he is the dragon, then I want him nowhere near the Dark One, because he's just going to corrupt them. And that made perfect sense to me. So nothing seemed off for me as a non-book reader. Like it seemed to all make sense. And as for his character, I wasn't that. He was maybe a bit too much of the troubled past stereotype. But the one aspect I did like that made him feel a bit more well-rounded to me was his family. Was that like sisters? Were those? Yeah. So having that aspect and him like wanting to look out for them and wanting to know what's going on, that made him a more well-rounded character, and someone I thought was a bit more interesting when they played the whole thing about him being a shady guy who's stealing shit or whatever. I don't know. I wasn't as interested in that, but adding that extra element that and plus were those his parents that were like treating him like shit or whatever?
Yeah.
So that explained his character more. So it did help. Like, I did feel ultimately that he was well rounded, and but I didn't appreciate that time when he was staying with that family in the farm, and the show tried to trick us and make us think that he killed them, and I thought I hated that. I thought it was obvious, because I think that would have been way out of character, even though he was corrupted by the evil knife at the time. I still felt like that was a dumb fake out, and I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like, I don't like that they did that with that character. See, it's interesting. Brandon says the sisters are true to the books. I was just about to say the sisters aren't in the books, because I don't remember them at all. I don't remember them being mentioned. I thought it was something the show added, but I guess Brandon picked up on it from the books. I missed that part. But maybe the show kind of showed them a little bit more. But yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with you on that. I think that makes him a more well-rounded character, and you don't get his point of view in the book, so that's also you don't have him thinking about his sisters or whatever. They can show in the show, they can show that his thoughts are with them a lot. And other than that scene you mentioned, which I didn't like either, I did like that they had him kind of connect with that little girl, and it was just fucking sad when she ends up getting murdered. But I like that for that character.
And I will say, I'm glad that they did recast this character instead of just had him stroke out and add in extra blood and be like, oh no, he died.
What show could have done that? What?
They should have recast Alex. I'm sorry, but anyway, that's another show.
Another show. Well, it was different because in that show, the same actor had been there for 5 seasons.
Yes, that's true. Where it is a bit easier to change actors if it's only 1 season.
Yeah. Brandon says the sisters aren't in book 1. Oh, okay. That's why I missed them, because apparently they come up in another book. But so then that means they added something from a future book into it, and that was a good choice. I do like that they added that for the character, for that character. I kind of want to. Did you have anything else to add about that character?
No.
So I wanted to talk about that story arc overall between him and Rand before I get particularly into Rand. But because, as I said earlier, I really felt like they did a good job of capturing the essence of their storyline, because in the book, they are the ones who are constantly being chased by Fades and Trollocs and Dark Friends, more than anyone else is. Perrin and Iguain, the biggest thing they have to worry about is their one encounter with the White Cloaks. And Lorraine and Lan and Nynaeve in the book are hardly have any chapters at all. So in the book, it's definitely like they're the ones who are like having the most to deal with. They're the ones who are the most afraid. And even though like they completely changed everything, that's not at all any of the same dangers that they face, the essence of it was captured really well. I got that from that storyline that it's like every episode they're the ones who are being pursued by the dark forces. And I think I don't know if they mentioned this in the show, but in the book they mentioned that knife is kind of like a magnet to the dark forces, and that's why they were drawing them more. I don't remember if they said that in the show or not, but
yeah, I don't remember that. So
they may not have said it in the show. Yeah. But so I thought they did I thought that was a good adaptation, even though they changed like pretty much everything. Everything was different, but the essence of it was still there. I think the thing that I didn't sit well for me is introducing Tom Maryland in episode 3 and then killing him in episode 4. And I don't know if he's really dead. I haven't gotten that far in the books. In the book, he also dies like off screen or off page. So he could come back. So you don't see a body. So he could still be alive both in the book and the show for all I know. I don't know. But I don't know. I didn't like in the book, he's there from the beginning and then dies later on. In the show, it's like he's just introduced and then dies the next episode. And I was like, I don't know. Was there much of a point to him? I don't know. What did you think about it?
Well, he was there for like 3 episodes, right?
No, he came in episode 3 and died at the end of episode 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. I thought he was in for 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So was the episode when Matt was like stealing from the dead body and then having a conversation with him? Was that this same episode he was introduced in?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh. All right. Okay. For some reason I thought it was a different one. Yeah. Oh, Brandon says doing a blackfish. I hope that he's still alive. I'm still holding out strong hope because I really like this character. And I think when I was talking to you through email, or whatever, earlier, I was comparing to the minstrel from The Witcher, which is the reason why I stopped watching that show because I couldn't fucking stand that damn minstrel. It annoyed the hell out of me. And so when they first introduced, like, we're saying, oh, this is a character who's gonna sing, I'm like, oh no, it's another fucking minstrel. But then when he actually sang, it sounded really cool. It had like this dark tone to it, and he seemed to be like a wise character. I was like, hey, I actually really like this guy, and I want to see him more. And then the next episode, he died. But again, like, I still don't, I question that because like they didn't there's always the thing, if you don't see a body, and they weren't there, they were just like, I'll hold them off, and so they're just assuming he's dead. They don't know that he's dead. So I'm hoping that he makes a reappearance because I really like this guy.
Yeah, and it was the same exact situation in the book. I mean, it was a different specific circumstances, but it was the same thing where he was like, I'll hold him off and you guys run off, and they were like, oh, he's dead now. And I haven't read far enough in the books to know if he comes back or not, so I don't know. But even if he doesn't come back in the books, why don't they bring him back in the show? I agree. I like this character. I thought it was too short-lived. It was just 2 episodes in this season. Even if they do bring him back, I would have liked to see him a little bit more.
That surprised me too. I thought he would stick around for longer. The fact that he disappeared so quickly, I think it was a poor choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also kind of contributes to maybe a little bit of the rushed feeling is that here's a character gone, like really quickly. Let's talk about Rand. And he's a part of this storyline too, and as I said, they do a really good job of the essence of it. And I mentioned earlier that their relationship with him and Iguain is a little more advanced because they're a little older, and I did like the aspect of that, and all throughout the season. And See, I am curious, just what you think about the reveal that he's the Dragon Reborn, because in the showrunner tried to be like, "Oh, this is a different turning of the wheel. Maybe it's somebody different than like it got people going, and people were like, oh no, what? Like after episode 4, everyone's like, maybe it's Nynaeve. Oh my god, maybe it's somebody completely different." And in the book, the women weren't even an option. Like the Dragon Reborn was definitely a man. So
Oh,
like
really?
only those 3 were even an option in the books. Iguain and Nynaeve still go along, but they weren't like an option. But in the show, there's 5 options, and they're really like, oh. And the showrunner's like, oh, could be somebody different, but it's not Rand. In the book, it's like super obvious because he's the point of view character for the majority of the book. So it was kind of obvious, and the show was a little less obvious. And I'm wondering if it wasn't obvious enough. Did it feel like they kind of just sort of all of a sudden sprung it on you at the end there?
No. I thought it was super obvious. Like yes, okay. Like as soon as they mentioned the concept of a dragon, I'm like, oh, it's Rand. Because I felt like this show, like I've seen enough fantasy movies and shows, and I felt like, oh, they were clearly presenting him as the main character in the first episode. And so I even said, like I remember saying to my mother, is like I really hope the dragon's not Rand because that's way too predictable. It's way too obvious. I was hoping it would be someone different because, well, I said this because he was the white male character, but I know in the books they didn't specify their race, but. So not even that is more the fact that the way they presented him has, the lovely farming boy. It just had this. That's how fantasies tend to present like their main hero, like the Frodo type character. So I just felt that he was the way too obvious choice for the dragon. And when they revealed it, I was actually really disappointed.
Oh, see, I didn't think he felt as main character as he did in the book, because in the book, like, other than the chapters where they have parenting and Iguain and it's in Perrin's point of view, and there's a couple chapters in Nynaeve's point of view. For almost the entire book, it's Rand's point of view, and you get what's going on in his head, and it's like super obvious that he's the dragon. So in comparison, like. To me, he didn't feel like as much as the main character. To me, the show felt more like Moiraine's show, whereas the book is definitely Rand's book. Rand is the character of the book, and I felt like in the show, Moiraine is the character. I felt like she was the one they spent more time on. They fleshed her out more, and I was going to talk about it when we get to her, but I like that choice. I like that they focus on her way more in the show than they did in the book, but from my perspective, I didn't think he was main character. So it's interesting for you to say, just from your experience watching fantasies or reading fantasies, like, oh, well, that's a fantasy thing they do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that Moiraine was definitely the main character of this show, but I feel like as far as presenting as the chosen one stereotype character, I felt like there was too obviously pointing to Rand. And also, I will say, like, I knew that it wasn't Nynaeve. Like that was obvious because they thought she was. Oh, she's in. And I was like, yeah, it's definitely not her.
Yeah, and Brandon points out in the chat that she is too old to be the Dragon Reborn because there was a particular prophecy on a particular day that happened, and it was like 20 years ago or whatever, and the other ones were all born around that time. However, they still tried to make put doubt in your head, like Moiraine's like, well, maybe we're wrong, maybe it could be. So they still tried to play it like it could be her. For the record, I never really believed it was her, but they definitely tried to make you think that it was her for a little bit. And
I actually think that the show should have went in a different direction. Yeah, especially the way that it could be someone different, and then they just did the same one. I think that's.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of the clues that he were the dragon weren't in the show though until like all of a sudden they just drop it all. See, there's a scene in the book where that I mentioned this in my episode 1 review that they cut out where Rand is taking his dad. He's carrying him from the farm back to the town to try to get Nynaeve to help, and And in the show, he's Bruce Bolton, which is
Yeah.
it's good to see Bruce Bolton being a good guy because his dad is a very genuine and good guy.
But see, yeah, I've seen that actor in other things. He always plays a villain, so it's weird. It was hard for me at first to adjust to this.
Yeah, me too. I have seen him in other things as a villain as well. So and he's taken him back, and his dad is delirious, and he's basically mumbling things about, I found the child, I found the baby, and Rand's like, wait, what are you talking about? No, you're my dad, and all throughout the book, he's like, he's definitely my dad. And then here they cut that out, and then they just sort of throw it in right when they do the reveal, and I don't even know if you even caught it because it just seemed like so quick. So it seemed, I don't know, I didn't kind of love how they presented it in the show. It just seemed like they just threw it on you at once.
No, I actually like that.
Oh, okay.
I guess because I'm a fan of nonlinear storytelling, and Lost would do this trick a lot, where they would withhold certain scenes and then throw it at you once you know the trick of it. And I actually like that in this. Yeah. That was one aspect I did like of it. Now I have a huge question that I hope you can answer, because something really puzzles me about particularly the scene, the first scene, the teaser that we get in the penultimate episode that shows Rand's mother giving birth. I still don't know who she is. I still don't know why her being Rand's mother indicates that he's the dragon. I don't know why those guys are fighting her. I'm very confused about this. I thought the show did a really poor job of explaining this. And I think my mother looked it up and tried to explain it to me, and I still don't get it. Like, I don't get it. And yes, I'm really confused about that whole thing.
I don't know that we're really at this point supposed to know a whole lot about that. And I don't know how important her identity is to him being the dragon. I'm not sure if that's...
But it seemed like that seer person that he was talking to told him about that as if that was like proof that he's the dragon. It seems like that episode was trying to say, aha, see, he's the dragon because of this. But why? Like, I don't get that.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I think we're not supposed to know yet. I think that's maybe something that comes up later.
I just got the impression from the show that we were supposed to get why that was.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I actually don't get that either. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just assumed we're not supposed to know yet. Really, yeah. I mean, he's an Ailman. They talk a little, or maybe it's more from books that I know this. But the Ailmen, I think they have women warriors, as you see here, and they are I don't know, I forget about them now, but I'm not sure what the connection is with the dragon.
So in the chat, Brandon's asking what my mother said. She said something about the mountain they're from is like Dragon Mountain or Mountain Dragon. And I was like, okay, so like
yeah. No, I definitely had some information about them too that I'm forgetting, but I still don't know what it has to do with him being the dragon anyways.
Because like when the way the episode presents itself is like we don't know that's Ren's mother, and then they reveal it later. Like, haha, see, it's her. I was like, so like, what does that have to do with anything?
I thought it was just more to show that's how to show.
That's how the father. It's not really his father. Yeah, I suppose. But it seemed like they were I felt like the seer was directly connecting that and that was further evidence of like, oh, I'm the dragon because of this.
Brandon says Dragon Mountain where the world was broken, so maybe that there's a connection there because that's where the breaking of the world took place.
Okay.
So that's how they know the dragon will be reborn.
And I know what the breaking of the world is because I watched your video and no other reason. I did not get that from the show at all either.
No, but that's another thing. This is Amazon and their stupid X-rays.
Oh, the X-rays. Yeah, I guess I should watch those. So.
Yeah, yeah. I would. I mean, people famously complain about the Lord of the Rings intro, but honestly, like I would have been totally fine if they, instead of having an X-ray feature, they did a Lord of the Rings intro explaining all of that. But
yeah, I like the Lord of the Rings intro. I totally disagree with the people who complained about it. I would have been a lot harder for me to follow as someone who knew nothing about the books or the story. I think that helped me follow the movie a lot better had they left it out. In fact, that's something they added like late in production too. Like there was a lot of debate on whether they should do it, and so I agree that this show should have had an intro just like that.
yeah, well, instead you can go watch the X-ray feature for. There's different X-ray features. There's one called Origins, and the one with episode 1 explains the breaking of the world. But I explained it in my video, so
Yeah.
but yeah, you had to click on the stupid X-ray thing. I still haven't watched the X-ray for the Expanse you guys.
Oh yeah, you need to do that.
Anyways, so I don't know how to divide this up. I don't know if I want to go ahead and just talk about his ending now or save the ending for the ending of the video. Because I'll just go ahead and talk about it now because I personally like really appreciated that he is able to overcome the Dark One by concluding that he cares more about what Iguain wants for herself than being selfish and wanting her for himself, even though that's not what she wants. I thought that was beautiful because I think that that's an aspect of what love is that doesn't often get, I don't know, really, it's kind of maybe a little bit under the surface, a little deeper. That doesn't often get touched on in television or movies. That when you really, really care about somebody, you want them to be happy and do whatever makes them happy, even if it hurts you. That he wants her to go and be to the White Tower and be an Aes Sedai because that's what she wants, and wouldn't want her to be in this life that she doesn't really want. So I thought that was great. That was how he was able to overcome the Dark One, because they definitely made it look like he was succumbing to it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'm kind of going to go off on a little tangent that's just related to this, but I've throughout watching most of the show, I felt like they were leading towards a finite ending. So I was like, I heard there's what, like 13 books after this or something crazy. And I'm like, how the hell are they going to keep the story going for that long? It seems like they would have to just keep tacking shit on because it seems like there's a finite story and they're leading to a finite ending. But when I saw the season finale, I had to readjust my thinking because I was looking at it like a Lord of the Rings. But then after seeing that finale, I was like, wait, no, this is not Lord of the Rings. This is Harry Potter. And when I readjusted my thinking that way, it actually made sense that it would be an ongoing story. It sort of compared it more to the first Harry Potter movie with the Voldemort spirit or whatever. And the Dark One did remind me a lot of Voldemort. And so maybe that's why I made that connection. I was like, oh, so this is just the first step like along the way. So now it doesn't seem like a finite story to me anymore, and it makes more sense how this would go for much, much longer, the same way the Harry Potter books did. Now, of course, it's not exactly the same, but I feel that similarity now, especially with the Voldemort thing.
Well,
he kind of looked like Voldemort, I felt, but anyway.
Yeah, well, that's why I liked it when he didn't look like Voldemort anymore. And it's an actor that I recognized, but I couldn't recognize from what. And then somebody pointed out something I listened to said he was from Westworld season 2, but I can't even remember who he was in Westworld season 2. I'm trying to picture who he would have been in Westworld season 2, but he does look really familiar.
I didn't recognize that actor at all.
No, apparently he was in Westworld season 2. I'll have to look up exactly what his role was in that show. Yeah, as far as like, I've always wondered how the hell they're gonna have a story for 14 books. I just kind of assumed that it's going to be a generational thing, that eventually, these characters will be gone and their descendants will carry forward. Like that's the only way that I feel like they could do 14 books, but I have no idea. I haven't read that far.
Wait, was the Dark One Ishmael?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm looking it up. The actor.
Okay.
Westworld Anton Costa.
Anton Costa. Who was that?
Is in season 2.
Yeah, that's what I heard. He was from season 2 of Westworld.
I still don't know. I don't recognize that name.
Yeah, it must not have been a huge role. I did recognize him though. He looked familiar. Anyways, getting a bit sidetracked. Do you have anything else on Rand before I move on?
I think I liked his ending. I thought that his ending made it seem less like a where I thought it was too telegraphed that he was dragging. I like how he kind of just rejected it and just ran off on his own. I thought it was a really interesting way to end the season.
Yeah, and I haven't quite gotten that far in the book, but by my memory, I don't think he does that. I don't think he runs off.
Right.
And so I'm like, what are they going to do here? And I just listened to a podcast where they were talking about the difference in the book. I haven't quite gotten that far enough, but apparently in the book, the Eye of the World is not the cage for the Dark One. They went there for an entirely different reason.
Really?
Yeah, and apparently the ending of the first book is something a lot of people complained about. Like they thought it was a little weird, didn't make a lot of sense. So the show was trying to make it a little more clear, and keeping in mind. So the showrunner is familiar with the entire catalog. So keeping in mind kind of where the story is going, and I guess trying to incorporate some of that into the first book, and so they tried to make it a little more television friendly. Which I loved. I have heard some very dissenting opinions on it too. That people did not like it, but I liked it.
The ending of the season?
The ending of the season.
Oh right, yeah. No, I liked it. I thought it was a good way to end the season.
Yeah.
The thing with the boats coming made no fucking sense to me, but I guess it's just teasing something.
Yeah, it's teasing something from the second book in the second season. I don't. Yeah, I don't know that if it was supposed to make a lot of sense. It was just, this is season 2.
Exactly.
Yeah. Alrighty, so let's move on to our last set of characters, which includes Nynaeve, Moraine, and Land. And this was my favorite part of the show. And we'll actually start with Nynaeve, but I freaking love the actress that they got for her. Like, and if you read her on the page, like she's nailed it. But they've really expanded her role in the show, and I absolutely love this character. I love that they've expanded her role. The only complaint that I had, I mentioned this in my reviews, was that the death fake out in the first episode doesn't exist in the books. I don't know why.
Really?
Why they threw that in there for no reason? Because in the book, Rand takes his dad back to the village and asks Nynaeve to heal him, and she's like, "No, she tries, but there's nothing I can do." And then Moraine comes in and heals him instead. And Nynaeve is very much there, but she still ends up going chasing after them. Just as she does in the show. But so the death fake out seemed a little pointless to me. I don't know why they did that. But other than that, I did really like what they did with her storyline, and I like the romance between her and Lan. And Lan is a character who he's a pretty much nothing character in the first book. I don't know if they develop him more in future books, but he barely does or says anything in the first book, and they really fleshed out this character a lot more in the show that I loved. And I liked her. Their romance to me felt very genuine and well earned. But I don't know. What were your thoughts on any of that stuff?
I wasn't as big of a fan of Nynaeve. I don't know. She felt kind of tacked on, and I think a lot of it had to do with the death fake out, where hearing that it was in the books seems like this was a very bad choice, because it made me feel when this character came back, and I was like, oh, so this character's still alive, and I don't know. I felt really disconnected, and I didn't. And then she kind of annoyed me the way she was like all negative and making all these smart ass responses the whole time. But I agree. I did like the romance with Lan, and Lan. That's the water character, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I really liked him. I thought he was a great, really well developed character. I liked when they had the episode where they got into all the different waters and had them hanging out, and had the one who had lost the Aes Sedai, and all that, like all that stuff, I thought was really good. And I like how it towards in the finale they show where he was from and get into his backstory more, and explore his connection to Moraine is different than the romance that he has with Nynaeve. I thought that was really good. So I loved all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Nynaeve, it's not like I totally hated her character. I just wasn't really that big on her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that just reinforces my opinion that Death Fake Out was a really bad choice.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Why are they pretending like she's dead? She's not dead. why are they doing that? That's dumb. Like right when they did it, I was like, she's still alive. What are they doing? And I know that the show didn't make the choice to kill her off when she's alive in the book because there are scenes from the trailer of her that we hadn't seen yet. So I knew she was still alive. So yeah, I was like, why? That's dumb. But all of the stuff that you were just saying about Lan and the scenes with him in the waters and all that, I loved all that too. None of that is in the book, or at least
really,
or at least not in the first book. Maybe it's something that they've drawn from future books or something. But absolutely none of that is in the first book. In fact, Lan just barely says or does anything, and he's just basically like Moraine's bodyguard and says grumpy comments about the kids every once in a while. But he's like a nothing character. So I loved what they did with him in the show and all the stuff you were just describing, not in the books. And I love that they added all of that into the show. I think it really adds a lot of depth, not only to that character, but also to Moraine's character, and it adds a lot of depth to the story overall and kind of to the lore. It really helps to the world building you were talking about, like sort of the what a warder is and how they live their lives. I think that it really adds a lot for a show viewer who is never, is not familiar with the story. So I think that is among one of the changes from the books that I'm most on board with. That I really, really love that they did that.
Yeah, that's. I was gonna say that does sound like the show did it a lot better.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if he gets developed more in future books or not because I'm only almost done the first book, but that is definitely something. And in other adaptations have done this. Game of Thrones have definitely like Cersei and Jaime were not really hardly in the first book. They weren't developed very much, and they developed them more in the first season. And The Expanse, Avasarella is huge in the first season. Didn't you say she's not even in the first book? I think
no, not at all. Yeah.
So it's something that adaptations have done before, and I think that it worked really well here. Now, and the same with Moraine. I feel like she's not a very developed character in the show, or the book rather. And the show, I think it was a good choice for the show to focus on her again because of she's central to the lore of this world and how magic works, connecting to the one source. The Aes Sedai are very crucial to the lore of this world, and getting to see the different colored Ajas and what they do and the different personalities. None of that shit is in the first book, and they
oh wow.
The red Aja lady, I always want to call her Elaine, but I think it's Elaine is the green one, and her name is like something else that starts with an E, and I always forget it. And I was just reading chapters about her in the book, and I still can't remember her name. Maybe Brandon will remind me in the chat, but she's in the book, but not nearly as much. And all those all of that whole thing where they capture the it's Landrin Is her name? No, it's something that starts with an E. In the book, it's some. There's a. Okay, maybe it's a different character. Anyways, I think it's Elandrin. I think it starts with an E, like Elandrin. Elandri. Yeah. Anyways, so um, the addition of all of that stuff, and in the book, the thing with the false dragon and Logain, there is a scene at where they all go to see him being carted through the city. It's a different city because they never actually reach Tarvalon or the White Tower in the book. But that stuff is in there. But all of the stuff with them capturing him and fighting him, that was show original. And I liked that they showed more of that because it really gives you kind of an inside look of what a male channeler is like in this world, and the Aes Sedai trying to subdue him and all that stuff. I loved that they added all of that stuff into the show.
So wait, are you saying they never went to the White Tower in the first book?
No.
What?
So apparently, the Amerlin seat, that character, apparently she comes in the second book.
Oh, okay.
I think her name was Sawan is her name, I believe. She is a character from the books, but I think that they don't get to her until the second book. But they decided to go ahead and insert her into the first book. And what my understanding is about, as far as that romance goes, that it is sort of alluded, there's innuendos and it's hinted at, but it was written in the 90s and it wasn't cool to write gay stories and like popular genre fiction. So that is another aspect that I really, really loved, that they just full out, they were lovers. I thought that really added to the story. So yeah, none of that shit happened in the first book. So they really, really shifted the focus from Rand, who is like the character of the book, to Moraine, and by the extension Land as well. Really focus on the Aes Sedai and the Warders, which I thought was a very smart choice for the show. So that whole thing, as far as a change in the adaptation, I thought was very, very good.
Yeah, I really like this character. I think I don't know if you heard of the actress before, but she's been in movies, so she's like the biggest star of the show. So it seems like that might have
Rosamund Pike.
Yeah, it might have informed their decision to focus more on her. But I think it worked. I think it worked for the show, and I really felt that she was really fleshed out. I would have been really frustrated just from watching the show. I would have been really frustrated if they never went to the White Tower, because they keep talking about the White Tower. I don't know, maybe they did in the books where like, let's go to the White Tower, meet at the White Tower, blah, blah, blah. And they never went. In fact, I was getting frustrated when it was taking them so long to get there. I'm like, hurry up and get to the freaking White Tower. and once they were there, I found that stuff really interesting. I did find like the different like colors of Aes Sedai. Like I didn't get that at first, but then I started becoming more clear. I was like, I'm still not totally clear what each different color denominates, but I know like the red ones are like the Inquisitors or something. Like
the red ones are the ones who are responsible for gentling the going after the male channelers and making the green ones are kind of like the warriors, but not necessarily like so. At first, the green and red was a little like kind of similar to me, but the green are more general fighters and warriors, whereas red are specifically sent to hunt down the male channelers. And I forget what the blue is. I think blue is more sciencey. I don't really remember. And then there's other ones that there is a X-ray on them too.
Is there? Okay.
But I forget.
Wait, Moraine's a blue one,
she's
right?
Blue, yeah.
I got the impression that the blue were like the ones that like traveled, that like went to different places. That's their thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was like her thing specifically.
Oh, okay, right.
But yeah, I don't know. You could be right.
That's just the impression I got
Yeah,
from what they were
yeah,
saying in the show.
yeah.
But the particular red character that you mentioned earlier, I mean, yeah, I didn't really. She kind of annoyed me. Like I was like, let's the less she appears on the screen, the better.
Yeah.
And I did like though how Marine kind of when she was like ready to spring on her, and she was like, "Well, I know about the man you've been having a secret affair with, and if if you do anything against me, I'll reveal this, and he'll be killed." Like that, and then we never saw again for the rest of the season. I was like, "Yes, damn!" Like that was a good moment. I did really like that,
Yeah.
and I did also love that, like the reveal. That what's the big high up one called of
Emerald
the ambulance seat. Yeah, I like the reveal that her and Moraine were having an affair. Like I totally did not like see that coming when they revealed that. It did surprise the hell out of me. I thought that was a great reveal, and it made total sense that they were kind of in on it together, trying to get the dragon to the place or whatever. And I thought that was a stroke of brilliant. And if it's true that they only hinted at this because they were too afraid to have a same-sex coupling or whatever, then I totally agree that I love that the show just full on like didn't just hint at it. It's like full on showed you. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, oh, I loved it. I was like, oh my god, that was so good, and I didn't see it coming at all either. Like because they're putting on a show, for everyone else, because they absolutely cannot have anyone find out that they're having this romance or that they're in on this plan together. So they have to really, put on a show for everyone, and they're of course putting on a show for the audience as well. Because I was completely blown away. Like I had no idea, but I thought it was. I was like, "Wow, this is so good!" It was great. I absolutely loved it.
But I don't know how necessary it was to see her like backstory at the beginning of that episode when
That
she was
was
a
one of
kid.
my complaints. I did
Yeah.
complain about that in that episode. I don't know that we needed that. There's a lot of. I think
Especially like they revealed it at the end. It was like, oh, from a girl from the river or whatever. And she said, I was like, oh, it's the girl. So what? Like, big deal.
Yeah, I was on board. I'm on board with you on that. I kind of had that critique when I did that episode review. That I didn't see the point of that. But I don't know. Other people liked it. But
I mean, I didn't think it totally sucked. It didn't make
it's
me
just
hate the episode or anything. It
yeah,
just seemed unnecessary.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Um,
did like the contrasting Moraine having a romance and then Lan having a romance. I think it makes it clear that the connect because at some points you could mistake that Moraine and Lan's connection is romantic, but I think they kind of really make it clear that it's not at all. That it's a
yeah.
deep connection, but not in a romantic sense. And I actually really love that. It makes it much more interesting to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, I too love that, and yeah, again, I love that they really flesh these characters out more on the show. Because they're really driving that home. Because I don't know if just from reading the first book that you would necessarily know that there is much of a difference because they just don't really cover it either way. Whereas here
Hmm.
they make it very clear. So I love that. I think my another thing that I kind of thought to me maybe was a little unnecessary in this whole storyline was that one dude. I can never remember his name because he's not in the books at all. But the one warder dude who's Aes Sedai is killed and then
Oh
he ends
yeah.
up committing suicide. I don't know. That didn't really do much for me. I didn't know that that
Really?
was
I like that one.
necessary. Yeah.
I like that story. I thought it furthered like how deep the connection of Water and Aes Sedai have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And it was like the most obvious thing in the world. He was going to commit suicide.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I thought he was going to commit suicide like immediately.
Yeah, me too. Actually,
Yeah. And actually, I almost partially like. I like how they made it clear what their connection is like. He could sense her death. But I almost expected him to like just feel the pain, like it's in his Dark Materials with the their demons, but it's not quite like that. So I'm glad they actually made that clear. I don't know. I feel like he could have killed himself in that episode, and we didn't need his whole storyline in that next episode. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But
yeah, I did think they dragged it out a bit too long. Maybe.
Yeah, I was like he like kind of he was in they have him in the preseason trailer that line where he's like, "Do you know what they call the Aes Sedai in the old tongue?" I was like, "Who the hell?" Like it reminded me of Boromir or something. Like he's very Lords of the Rings-y. I was like, "Who is that guy?" I don't know who the hell that is. I mean, this is the show original character. That's why. Anyways, we're kind of jumping around a bunch in this storyline. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you your opinion on that's not a part of the storyline before we wrap up. So was there anything else in the Moraine land of it all, or Aes Sedai of it all, that you wanted to touch on?
No, I don't think so. I guess I was just going to mention that you mentioned that false dragon thing. That seemed like I did like the sort of fights. So none of that was in the books, right?
Yeah, he's in the book, but he's just kind of mentioned, and they do go and watch him like go through the city or whatever. But all of that specific stuff with them fighting him and all of that from episode 4, none of that was in the book.
I mean, at first, I don't know, I'm kind of torn on him because at first I didn't really like him, but then I love like how it's showing like the Aes Sedai like trying to contain him, and I like how it kind of confuses, like they try to fake it out to make you think that maybe he is the dragon at one point, and it kind of trying to confuse. Yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately I did like it, but it did seem I would have guessed it wasn't in the books because it seemed like a detraction from the story.
Yeah, no, I liked that they. I mean, it's mentioned in the books, but they go into a lot more detail, and I enjoyed seeing that detail. Actually, it was a little bit of a sidetrack. Again, they might contribute a little bit to the odd pacing issues because they do this sidetrack, they do the sidetrack with the dude killing himself, but then rush through other things. So
yeah.
So I mean, it does speak, I think, to the larger like issues that I think hopefully they can work out.
I like the dude and the dude killing himself, and I like some of the scenes they had with the other warders, and it showed like the connection they have, and it showed like lands. But I agree that they could have shortened that storyline, that it kind of dragged on a bit too long.
Yeah, and I liked all of that stuff as well. I think that was a great addition for the show. All right. So if there's nothing else on that, the last thing that I wanted to ask about. So you didn't find the X-ray feature before you saw the finale. Was that opening scene just confusing as fuck for you? Did you have any idea what was happening in that scene? Or
yeah, it was confusing as fuck for me. But I watched your review and it helped explain. And I was like, because I didn't know if it was the past or the future. Because at first I thought it was the past, and then there was like I had all this high technology. I was like, "Oh, this is the future."
Oh, you missed it. It said 3,000 years ago at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess I did miss that.
Yeah, it tells you they were very clear as like a thing that's. Like
okay, right. I guess I didn't notice that. Yeah, maybe for some reason like I started it like a couple seconds later or something. But anyway, yeah. So I was really confused why there was what was going on with that. But then in your review, you made it quite clear. So now I get it, and now it makes sense. But I feel like it does. I don't know. It reminds me a lot of Game of Thrones because I feel like the first couple seasons of Game of Thrones did not explore the lore either. Some of the finer details and the characters reference it a lot, and you feel lost unless you go look it up. And they had so it's like similar to the X-rays. They had the history and lore things. And it feels like you need to do supplemental research in order to understand the story. And I don't know if I really like that. I shouldn't have to research in order.
I agree. I think they should have done the Lord of the Rings style thing about the Dragon Reborn, or the original Dragon.
Because you mentioned like that there was an element of darkness to that scene where the guy was like touching his son and being loving because that he eventually goes mad and kills them, and I had no idea about that. That darkness was completely over my head because I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah. Now, as far as the kind of futuristic city, so the implication is that. So I think basically we're to believe that this is taking place way thousands of years into our future. So the 3,000 years ago is way into our future, where it's a futuristic, where science and magic have kind of become one thing, and they're an enlightened culture, and the breaking of the world was basically an apocalypse which destroyed all of that, and they set them back. So, and there had been hints about that. I can't remember if it was the hints were in the book or in the show or supplementary materials, but I definitely it wasn't a surprise to me. Definitely I had gotten hints from somewhere that was the case, and I don't know. I kind of think it's cool, but that it's sort of it's a fantasy world, but definitely like trickling a little element of sci-fi as well. But I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I don't know. I was just confused by it. First, I had no idea that it was until just now that this is actually supposed to be our future.
Well, that's just I think what we're supposed to get out of it. I don't think that they necessarily say that outright. I think that's an assumption that you could make, maybe.
I just assumed this was a fantastic realm like Middle Earth or Westeros.
Which that could also be as well. Yeah. It could also be true as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be our future. I guess that would be one possibility. But another possibility is it's just an entirely fantastic realm. But the point is, whether it's our future or not, it is still the point is that it was an advanced society that falls after the breaking of the world, regardless of what kind of society it is.
Yeah. And I totally did not get that from that scene.
Yeah, well, the fact that you didn't see those 3,000 years ago probably probably didn't help you. So checking in the chat, Brandon put a link to, or at least mentioned the Westworld guy. I'm clicking on that now.
Yeah, see, that's what I was. That's what I was looking at. He was like the tech expert that worked for Delos. I guess he was, where Floki was in the other timeline. I think he was like the tech guy that worked for him.
Yeah, I thought he. Yeah, okay. I thought he was like one of those types of dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah, and Brandon also mentioned the prologue of the book, which I need to go back and reread, because the prologue of the book, I think, also does like the 3,000 years ago thing. And when I read it, I was like, I don't understand what's happening. It's the first thing you read. So I think I'm going to, after I finish reading the book, I think I'll go back and reread the prologue.
But I will say that the opening scene of the finale with the future stuff still didn't confuse me as much as the opening scene of the previous episode with the woman giving birth. Like, I still don't get that.
Yeah. Brandon says, anyone else scared silly by the women on the ships at the end? Honestly, I was more confused than anything.
Yeah, me too.
But I just decided to chalk it up for, those were people from the second season.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it was. I've seen other shows do this, and I don't think this was a particularly good tease in my opinion.
Yeah.
It was just too out of place.
Yeah. Yeah, because you just have no idea who they are or anything like that. They're just these random people. But yeah.
Oh, I did want to mention really quick that city that they went to was like the borderland or something at the end of the season. That was so in the books, did it have a particularly Asian feel to it the way that it did in the show?
I actually haven't quite gotten there in the book.
Oh, you haven't.
Okay. But my guess would be no.
Okay.
I think that was probably a show thing.
And it reminded me a lot of Gundor, or the Minas Tirith from Lord of the Rings, where the Minas Tirith was right on the border of Mordor, and they kept all the orcs at bay. I got that sort of feeling.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. Oh, and you talked about like the final battle in your video, and how you liked how we didn't really see it. I like that too. In fact, if we got more of the battle, I would have been annoyed, and I was actually worried. I was like, "Oh no, they're gonna have all these stupid epic battle scenes," because it didn't really have anything to do with the main character story. So I thought it would have been an aside. So I'm glad they didn't focus too much on that.
Yeah, they treated it like the B plot that it was. Like they didn't really.
Yeah,
no,
go ahead.
I said when they did focus on it, they focused on our characters that we know.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
And I didn't like the reveal of that one dude that like I barely saw and I barely knew who he was. It was this guy who appeared in one scene in the first episode, and that he was like the evil friend or whatever. I was like, that really, I don't know. I thought that was dumb. I really, maybe he's important in the books, but as a show watcher, I was like,
yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. That's when I kind of assumed that any show only people would think, because I feel like you barely know the guy. And apparently he is like an Easter egg throughout the season. Like if you look closely, he's in the background. But if you're not looking for stuff like that, then you don't know that he's following them all throughout the season. He's just kind of there, and you're like, yeah. I mean, I got it. So, but I also felt like that someone who wasn't familiar with the book would probably be like, why do I care about this guy? Yes. So you're kind of confirming what I thought would be the case, because that's I don't know that they necessarily did a great job with that.
Yeah, because when they were mentioning, because they kept showing him the previously on it, I was like, I thought it would be something related to Matt, but it turned out he was this big evil character. I'm like, he was in like one scene. Why should I care about him?
Yeah, and they did mention it. I don't know if you caught. They mentioned him in the previous episode. Where
I did. Yeah, no, I caught that too.
Yeah,
still like
No, I could definitely see that. Juan Brandon, so you made this comment a while ago, but so I lost the context. But what did you mean by I did have a Daenerys sailing for Westeros moment? What?
Oh, probably talking about the women that they showed at the end of the episode, at the end of the season, of the boat.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, Daenerys didn't cause tidal waves and kill them. Okay. Well, I think we pretty much covered what I was hoping to get to. Did you have any other thoughts? Anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap this up?
No, I think we about covered it.
All right. Well, I want to thank Brandon Howells for joining us in the chat as usual. Good to see you once again. And Marc, I'm glad you could join me and give me some perspective from someone who's not at all familiar with the source material. I'm kind of, because I feel like when I do get perspective, it's a lot usually like from the people who've read the books a million times, and I'm kind of sort of in the middle, like I sort of have read the first book, but not really. And so, like, I was very curious at your thoughts. So I'm glad you could join me for this. Well, why don't you tell the people where they can find you and what you're up to?
Before that, real quick, I just want to ask, is this show going to go on for like 14 seasons?
I don't know what their plan is. I don't know if they have that sort of...
Because I seriously doubt it. Amazon seems to be canceling shows before they get very far.
So they're going to... No, Marc, they're going to go on for 8 seasons, and the 7th and 8th season they're going to cram in the last like 8 books and then 6 episodes each. And Moraine is going to kill innocent people all over. That's what's going to happen, yeah.
I'd rather they just cancel it. But anyway. So anyway, yes, my name is Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. I cover mostly Star Trek. Also, of course, really big into The Expanse, covering that as well, doing live discussions and reviews on that every week as that airs, covering Discovery and Prodigy when that comes out, and also doing random videos and other Star Trek shows and other shows like Star Wars and Clone Wars. And as I mentioned before, I will be doing a top 10 best shows of the year that will come out later this week. And I guess I already spoiled what my number 5 is, but you can check it out for the rest of it. And and thanks so much for having me. It was great fun.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And if you are finding me for the first time, my name is Alyssa. Not usually Alyssa Sadai, but that's my name for this video. But you can please subscribe to my channel and check out all the content. I also cover Star Trek. I was covering the Wheel of Time weekly, so you can go back and look at that. I am also doing my own top 10, which will be out on New Year's Eve, the top 10 of 2021. I got all kinds of stuff. I'm putting videos out all the time. I just reviewed The Witcher Season 2 as well. So go check out all of that stuff, and hope to see you all really soon. Have a good night, everybody. See you later.